This is Pastor Eric, and you're listening to The Clergy Corner. Welcome to episode 299 of the special podcast about life and faith. I'm your host, Eric Borstad, the pastor of Ankeny United Church in Ankeny, Iowa. And it is my hope that this will be a time of reflection, healing, and wholeness for you. Well, this past week has been a just long, big emotional roller coaster. As earlier on, we lost the 100-year-old beloved matriarch of our church. And for those who don't know her, you'd think losing a 100-year-old, that can't be all that surprising, right? But to be honest, I'm not sure that there will ever be a more surprising 100-year-old death in human history. That's just who she was. And it was a surprise. I had just spent that very morning with her on a visit, and she was as wonderful and as vibrant as ever. But that's just what happens sometimes, right? And to be honest, I think that's the way some of us would want to go. Quickly, painlessly, and peacefully after a wonderful day doing the things that we love. And the timing couldn't be more perfect than that our quiet service, our essentially Blue Christmas service, a Christmas service for those who are grieving, was already scheduled for this past Sunday night. And it serves as an opportunity for those of us that need it to gather together to acknowledge that even in the best of circumstances, this time of year can be hard. And it's especially difficult for those who are grieving. It can feel especially isolating around the holidays. So that's what I want to talk about today. Let's address the elephant in the room, as it were, because I believe that only by truly talking about it can we find the strength and support that we actually need this holiday season. Now, the Christmas holiday is often described as the happiest time of the year. And understandably so, right? It is filled with joy, laughter, and celebration. But for many, this season is a stark reminder of loss, grief, and pain. And if you found yourself struggling in the midst of the holiday cheer, if you've felt out of step with the holly and jolly all around you, well, I might be speaking directly to you. So today we're going to talk about grief during the holiday. How hard it is, but also how faith and community can help us navigate this tender time with both authenticity and hope. But first and foremost, let's just start straight off by naming something that isn't said nearly enough. That it is okay to not be okay. It is okay to not be okay. And if you're not okay, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you need to try to, buck up and change and somehow fake your way through it. Not at all. It is okay to not be okay. The holidays can magnify our sense of loss, and whether it's our first season without a loved one, or maybe we're just reminiscing of memories of better times, or it could even be just the weight of the year that's passed. Just think about what a year it has been, right? January seems like a lifetime ago. And I doubt many, if any of us, could have predicted where we have ended up in our lives. Here we are in the middle of December. But all the while, the world, or at least society, expects that we put on a smile, go to parties, join in festivities and caroling. But when your heart is heavy, when you carry that grief like a yoke on your neck, Pretending can feel exhausting and can be, quite honestly, impossible to do. Because the reality is that grief has no timeline, right? Whether your loss is recent or decades old, it is natural for the holidays to bring all of those emotions back to the forefront. And it's because holidays are tied to traditions, to rituals with loved ones. When someone's missing, that emptiness can feel overwhelming. And no amount of time that will pass will ever make those absences any easier. No scar, no matter how old it may get, will ever truly, fully disappear. They leave remnants of the past. Reminders to us of love that was once shared, and losses we now mourn. So if you're feeling this way, let me just remind you, no matter what it is you might think, the reality is that you are not alone. You are not alone. And it may feel that way sometimes. I get it. It can feel so isolating. But I promise you, you're not alone in this. It's okay to acknowledge your pain, to let yourself feel it, even in the midst of the sparkle and the glow all around you. And I know, trust me, I know, that one of the hardest things about grieving during the holidays is the pressure to perform, to show up at events, to buy gifts, to put on a smile for family photos. And that pressure can even come from well-meaning loved ones, unintentionally, who don't know how to help, or it can come from our own inner voices that tell us that we should be doing more or grieving differently, or that we have to somehow hold ourselves to some unrealistic standard. But here's the truth. The truth is you don't have to fake it. You need to give yourself permission to set boundaries and protect your heart. And yes, that might mean saying no to certain traditions or skipping a party here and there. Maybe it's letting those walls come down just enough to let a close friend or family member know how you're really doing, so that they can help carry that weight with you. Grief is only all-consuming when it is experienced alone. And of course, if nothing else, remember that it is faithful for us to grieve. It is faithful. It is necessary. Even Jesus himself modeled this for us. The shortest verse in the entirety of the Bible, and perhaps one of the very most important texts, is in John 11:35. It's the shortest verse in the Bible, and it says, translated to English, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Even as the love of God made manifest, he did not hide his grief. He mourned openly, surrounded by his community. He did not hide his tears, nor did he shy away from those around him. He let those walls come down, and he gave himself permission to grieve. And I think this reminds us that it is okay to let others see our pain. So the question becomes, what do we do in the midst of this difficult season, right? How can we begin to prioritize our own wants and needs when we find ourselves simply just struggling to find our way? And at least for some of us, in the midst of our grief, faith can be a lifeline. The holidays at their core remember that God meets us in our pain. The psalmist in Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." You don't have to walk through this season alone. Even the crushed in spirit will find refuge, comfort, and strength in God. For God's presence is with us, even in the midst of the silence, even through the tears. But right? Sometimes we acknowledge that we need more than just a quiet faith. We need people. We need people. Community, I think, is a very important source of healing, even and perhaps especially when we don't feel like engaging. That's why I encourage you to seek out someone that you trust, if there's a support group out there, or even a church service, if there's a local church in your area where you can feel seen and supported. It is important to find ways to tap into community, but not in such a way that you feel like you have to fake it either, right? Because when grief is shared, grief is lightened. And the more we share, the lighter that grief becomes. It doesn't go away, but it becomes easier for us to carry. At the very least, find someone that you trust and that you don't feel like you have to pretend with. And if you're not someone that, likes to surround themselves with people, find someone that you can just sit in silence with. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. Just sometimes being just physically next to someone, even in silence, is a visible, tactile reminder to us that we are not alone. So as we close, I just want to share a few practical things that we can do to honor our grief while finding glimpses of hope, especially during this holiday season. First and foremost, you might run across the need to create new traditions. If old traditions feel too painful, or if they are too tied up with people that are no longer here, consider starting something new. Something that brings comfort or honors a loved one's memory. Maybe it's making a meal or going out to eat at one of their favorite places or types of food, or baking cookies that they love. There's really no end of things that you can do. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to be yours. The second thing I'd encourage you to do is to set realistic expectations, right? You don't have to do it all. This is the time to focus on what truly matters to you and to let go of the rest. And yes, some people may not get it, right? Some people may be disappointed if you set boundaries and you find yourself needing to pull back, but they will come to understand in time. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you are doing nobody any favors if your well runs dry. The third thing I'd encourage you to do if you are a person of faith is to lean into your faith. Spend time in daily prayer, meditation. Read scriptures that bring comfort, or just reflect upon the meaning of the season. There's plenty of devotionals out there, daily devotionals, that can help guide you if you don't know where to start, especially for those that are grieving. The next thing I'd encourage you to do is to reach out. And we sort of touched on this before, but to just let someone know how you're actually feeling. Not the, oh, I'm fine, hanging in there, those classic cliche responses. Let someone know how you're actually doing. To not be afraid to ask for help or companionship, because isolation is our worst enemy. So it is important for us to find ways to be in contact, in connection with the people who truly get us. And the last thing I will lift up is to just give yourself grace. Give yourself some grace. There's no right or wrong way to do this. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. Everyone does it differently. There's no timeline. There's no checklist. So just take this whole thing one moment at a time. Grief is a marathon, a lifelong marathon that we run. It never ends, right? It is not a sprint. It is something we learn to adapt to that becomes part of us. It doesn't go away. So offer yourself the same grace that I know you would offer others. If you're grieving this holiday season, know that it is okay to feel the weight of your loss. But remember that even in the darkness, there is always hope. You are not alone. The love of God is with you, and there are people who care deeply about you. So my prayer for you is that you find some moments of peace, no matter how small. And may you feel the presence of love surrounding you, even in the midst of your grief. Until next time, be well, my friends. Amen. Thanks once again for listening. If you want to learn more about Ankeny UCC, go to ankenyucc.org. And if you want to write in a show suggestion or have any comments, you can send those emails to clergycornerpodcast@gmail.com.